Hey guys, my name is Matt Harris. I'm a wedding filmmaker and we're going to be talking about the Ronin-S today. It's going to be a review and a tutorial, and also I'm going to be giving away the one that's in this box. So stick around for that. The information will be down below, but let's get to it. Now my perspective is going to be using this at live events where you need to move very quickly and also at the same time need to go as unnoticed as possible. So I'm going to go over a lot of things in this. I'm going to show you how to set up and tune the Ronin-S. I also want to give you some tips on operating it. I've been using the Ronin-m, which I have mounted on this grip right here. And so I'm stepping to a smaller rig with the Ronin-S. The first thing you noticed when you look at a Ronin-S is the position of the roll arm is lower. And to me, that was great because it's like, oh, I can see the screen much easier than some of the other single-handle gimbals that I've tried. But then I noticed what I started to do was touch the screen to adjust focus. Because of the way the motors work on the Ronin-S, you can actually touch the screen lightly as you're shooting. And so now you're able to pull focus between two subjects as you walk. You can make sure that it tracks their back until they turn back around. A lot of things that weren't possible can now do because of the combination of the lowered roll arm and the updated motor system. I know that looking at gimbals and thinking of just the exterior is what makes the difference. Oh, it has a nicer grip, or oh, the Ronin-S has like longer battery life, but I don't really think that's what makes this special. I think the way that the motors correct while you're working with it feels like a more natural correction, similar to what I was used to with my glide cam. Once you're all dialed in, it's very simple to operate. The main thing you need to remember is the trigger on the front. Double clicking that will get you back to center no matter what happens. So to go into low mode, you hold the trigger in the front and it will actually spin into low mode. And if you want to come back up high, just keep holding that trigger and it comes back up. Now something else with the trigger is that you can hold it to enable follow mode. What follow mode does is it locks your pan and tilt and keeps the camera in an exact position no matter what you do. So I found this useful for several shots. There's a couple times where I wanted to lean over something to use it as foreground and kind of have that extra depth in the shot. Now I found the Ronin-S to be very precise when I want to land somewhere. It's been really good. I have an example right here where there was a big dance by a bunch of groomsmen, and right at the end the groom comes in, he slides in, and one of the interesting things about camera movement is that if it's done right, it almost feels like you're part of the choreography. And because you could be so precise with this tool, I was able to just pan with him and end in this composition that looks very nice. And this is something we're going to go over in a future video. So I was really happy with the way that it performed during that dance. Something I've been asked is the Ronin-S harder to hold than the Ronin-M because you use one hand? And the main camera that I've used on the Ronin-S has been the 1DX Mark II. I'm often holding it with two hands like this, and this makes it a lot easier to hold for a given amount of time. It just allows you to hold it a little closer to your body compared to the Ronin-M, whereas oftentimes I have to hold it out from my body a little bit. So my tip to you guys is when you're operating this, maybe keep it a little bit closer to your body to minimize the fatigue on your arms. The Ronin-S has a rubber-lined handle on both sides. You can actually hold it for a very long time and not have to work really hard to keep it from slipping through your hands. If you're using this all day, it makes a huge difference. The size of this has really opened up a lot of doors. I've been able to do some shots that I just haven't been able to get with the Ronin-M. So I'm gonna show an example right here where I actually slipped through two people who were watching the first dance, and I'm holding the Ronin-S out like this and I turn sideways and I'm able to just like slip through in between them and keep going with the shot. Another thing about the size is that it just doesn't draw attention to itself. You kind of just put it in front of you and it doesn't stand out. It doesn't draw your eye to it nearly as much as something bigger. So something else I want to test, I'm going to show right here, is using a zoom lens on the camera and actually zoom in past where the camera is balanced for. Now some gimbals don't work well with zoom lenses. They extend so much that it throws the balance off. So I wanted to see if it was possible to use the large Canon 24-70mm 2.8 lens at different focal lengths. So I found the Ronin-S to be really stable between the focal lengths, so even though it was slightly off balance when zoomed in to 70mm, I was able to get some nice shots and then zoom back out. very hard to keep out vibration from a long lens on a gimbal. It's also hard to keep focus because the depth of field is so shallow. So I'm gonna show a shot here that I did with the Ronin-S on the Canon 135 f2 lens. This is not a stabilized lens, and because of how smooth the motors are in this, now I have this shot that I've really never seen unless it's been on a bigger budget production, because I'm able to spin around and have that long lens parallax look to it, and it looks really good. And one of the coolest features of the Ronin-S is the ability to do what they call infinite spin, and that is when the camera rotates around. So what I suggest to set this up is to go to either mode 2 or mode 3, whatever you'd like to be for your infinite spin. Once in there, go to configuration and remote control, click on channels, click on the word roll, all right? And then go to not applicable. Take channel 3 and make that the roll axis. So now that you're ready for infinite spin, all you have to do is tilt the Ronin-S forward, double click the trigger, pan left and right here, and it will spin. I've done a few shots with it. I think having infinite spin just in your back pocket as a tool as a creator, you'll start thinking of ways to use it that you haven't considered before. Now the other thing about the stand is really, it's just as much of a handle. So many times if I want to shoot up high, I'm using this as just an extension. And so what I like to do is use a Manfrotto quick release right here on top of it. And in that way I can actually take the stand off quickly and mount this to a tripod or something else. And this has become really useful for weddings. Now I can just pop this on a tripod, set it down, let it roll because the battery lasts forever. And then as soon as I know that they're announced, slide it off the tripod and set it to the side or carry it with me, and then just back out, walk with a couple down the aisle. A little bonus tip is I do the same thing with fluid heads and tripods. So that way you can pop off a fluid head, stick on your slider, put the head back on all really quickly. Having that in your workflow can make you move a lot faster. Every wedding I've been to with my Ronin-M, I've always brought my glide cam or Steadicam Solo for the reason of doing whip pans during the reception. I've always had to bring the glide cam for that. But now you have sport mode. So sport mode can be engaged by holding down the M button while you operate the Ronin-S. And you can see how responsive the Ronin-S becomes. Now the battery life on this is wonderful. They claim 12 hours. And I don't think they're kidding. I've done 4 or 5 weddings now with it. Each wedding I've always had at least 50% battery left. I have not gone below 50% battery on anything. I think one battery will definitely get you through the day. But when it comes time to charging, they include a fast charger with it. I think it's 25 watts and it charges in 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is much better than if you try to use your iPhone charger on it, and that can take a long time. Something else I noticed is that your MacBook charger with a USB-C cable will actually charge the Ronin-S as well, so don't be afraid to try that. Now, something I love about the Ronin-S is that it has a motor kill option. What that is you just double tap the power button and we'll go into rest mode without powering down. And this is really the way I use it for most of the day. If I set it down, I know I'm gonna be back in 10-15 minutes, and then come back, you just double tap again, and it's ready to go. You don't have to wait for it to boot up. And speaking of boot ups, one thing that I don't like is that it has this weird ding to it when it powers on, because I powered it up at a ceremony the other day. A couple people turned around and looked at me. The plate it comes with is compatible with some Manfrotto heads. One issue is that on the heads like a 701, when you push the plate in, it will only come up to the edge because of the design of the plate. Other problem I have is that Manfrotto plates that come with those heads are not compatible with the Ronin-S, so you have to use the Ronin-S plate on the Ronin-S. Traveling is very easy. I don't break it down at all. I'll just lay it on top of a tripod bag. I can see a huge advantage for just being able to break this into 2 for using it for a travel film. And then now you've got this tiny little setup you can just put in a bag or a backpack. when you want to raise and lower the camera. There's a tendency to want to tilt forward like this, but what happens is you introduce another range of motion that you have to try to physically stabilize with your body. You need to try as much as possible when you want to raise and lower the camera to raise and lower your arms in this way. That's going to help you get more stable shots. So the follow focus that comes on here is a really great way to control focus as you operate if you don't have or like in-camera autofocus. So I'm told they're going to have a lot of things coming out, like a dual handle system, external follow focus, a lot of other things. I could even see some third-party stuff being added to it because of this mounting system they have here. Now inside the app, there are a lot of cool features in the control section for doing time-lapse, motion lapse, panorama. Another cool thing is the capture setting. You can hand this off to someone and let them actually control the Ronin-S remotely. I can also see this being used for an unmanned camera, and I can see that being a very useful feature for certain situations. And so if you want to enter the contest for this Ronin-S giveaway, all you have to do is enter below. The only requirement is that you make professional videos of some sort. So as long as you're making money, making films, it doesn't have to be your full-time job, but I do want to help someone who is doing this for a living and not just somebody who might be interested in using this and then they win it and maybe they put it on the shelf because they, this isn't what they do. So when you first balance your camera on the Ronin-S, go ahead and do auto tune. There's two ways to do auto tune. You can hold the M button, hold the trigger, and you'll hear this crazy noise. Kind of sounds like it's giving birth to an alien or something. Okay, so auto tune gets you in the ballpark for where your camera wants to be. So when you first get your Ronin-S, you mount and balance it. It's very sensitive right off the bat. It almost looks like maybe it's not balanced properly, but actually everything's just fine. It's just the sensitivity by default is a little bit high. So the way you tune how responsive the Ronin-S is to your movement is by dialing it in smooth track. So what smooth track does is it smooths out the camera's reaction to your physical movements. Be aware as you set these things up to be in mode 1, and then we'll use the other two modes to do some alternate settings. I've found the smooth track settings of 10 all the way across the board for speed, deadband, and sensitivity to be a really good starting point. So with tilt, I found that a speed setting of about 15, deadband about 5, and then the sensitivity at the default of 20 feels pretty good. And remember, these are just starting points to get you going. You're really gonna need to dial this into your personal preference. There's also an option in the app to do push pan. I didn't understand what that was until someone showed me, and it's pretty cool. It means you can actually overtake the camera and just like position it and be like, I want it to be here or shoot there. Unfortunately, I found that once push pan is enabled, sometimes the Ronin-S can get confused and mistake my movement for push pan, I guess. I'm not sure. I think maybe it needs a slight update to just take care of that. I have found push tilt to work just fine though. Now the second part of controlling the Ronin-S is using the joystick. Now when I first got it, I thought either I'm gonna use smooth track with my movement or the joystick. As I was using smooth track to pan around, I may want a little bit extra pan out of it, and I could just use the joystick to turn with me. By using the combination of both, you can actually have smooth track settings that are a little more forgiving, but then when you want more movement, you can use the joystick to do that. So I think you get the best of both worlds in that way. So now let's tune the joystick. So we're going to remote control. That's going to be a little bit of personal preference, but I found that about a deadband of 30 works well. So I found a max speed of about 40 feels nice, and so smoothing at about 15 I think is a good starting point. So moving on to tilt, I think the deadband at 30 again works well, but for max speed, 50 seems to be a nice speed. And then of course smoothing, move that up to about 15. And so I actually like to reverse the pan and the tilt. And the reason is as you turn to the left, I feel like pushing away to pan this way as well makes a lot of sense. Now if you want to reverse the pan or the tilt, just go into your channels and you'll see channel 1, which is tilt, and you see this normal button. Just click it and it will reverse. And then you can do the same thing for pan. And then you can bring it all together, panning and then also using the joystick to augment your pan. So I encourage you to play with those and see what settings work best for the way that you shoot. For a lot of people, I think the Ronin-S is the perfect gimbal for travel films, especially because it's so small, you can just pack it away, but also for weddings because you go unnoticed, the battery lasts all day. I'm getting smoother shots with this than I am on my Ronin-M, so across the board, it's almost an upgrade, you know, it's smaller but better. The giveaway information is below. If you like the video, hit like and subscribe because I'm gonna have a lot more coming for you guys, and I'll talk to y'all next time.